Well, there isn't much to say, only that it's got steel wheels, and it's a wood wagon, and it probably doesn't have many springs. It probably wasn't very comfortable to ride in. Okay, that's enough of that one.
Wait, go.
This is the Baker family. Mom was taking the pictures, and that's Jesse, Rose, and Mary, and I, and my dad in their old car. I don't know what the model was, but it had wooden spokes on it. Right here under the picture it says 1929. And then that was in the winter. It was all bundled up. Here is a summer picture of it, the same thing. Oh, my mom was in that one. He was all dressed in summer clothes, so we kept the car quite a while, I guess.
This is a nice place. You have to go there. I mean,
during the World War II, during World War II, Rosen had bought a 1930 or a 34 Chevy, paid $75 for it. And this is what I learned to drive on. My mom, when Rosen went away to the service, my mom kept the car, and they drove it a lot. And she taught me to drive that car. She'd take me down to Sloan's Lake, and we'd drive around. Every Sunday we'd drive around Sloan's Lake, and that's where I learned to drive. Picture of my dad in World War I in some kind of a big truck, and the steel wheels, and he wore spats. And there was a flu epidemic, and he did get the flu when him and Mama was married. He was just getting over the flu, that's all.
What's that one?
This is a picture of my mother and her sister. I don't know if they had those nice dresses. When they would go to get a photograph taken, they would wear dresses from the shop, from the photographer's shop, but they're awfully nice clothes for homestead girls. And this is a picture of Helen Baker, my mother. Must have been about in the 40s sometimes. Very good picture of her. Janice is the photographer here. She said maybe I should tell how I met Bill. He was a friend of my cousin Dudley Rye, and he was renting a room from my parents, and then we went to a dance, went dancing in a bar, and I fell in love the first date, and still do.
How old were you?
He was just back from the war. He was just getting over the war with lots of emotional problems. But he come out of it.
Now, what should I talk about? Oh my God.
The advantage of taking pictures
Well,
is you take a lot of them, then you can kind of
thing I can think
you
of,
pick them out.
Edith and myself went to school, and a schoolhouse for 2 years, and there was only 16 in the whole school, first to the 8th grade. She was in about the 7th, and I was in the 2nd. And we walked to school every day and walked home every day. Both ways was uphill, in case anybody wants to know. Right, Edith? Walking to school down at Deer Creek, uphill both ways, 2 miles each way. We did. They're saying that me and my motorcycle accidents, as you can see, this was not a motorcycle accident. And one of the very few times. That was him right there. The cute little kid there. He changed a lot. That's it. That's when I was young and tender, and that's about all I got to say.
Ben, I want to tell you about the story of my birth. We were still out, lived on the homestead, and of course Aunt Roz was born, and I was 2 years later. Well, Mom was pregnant, and Roz was born in October. Well, 2 years later, in September, I was due. So Grandma and Grandpa Robinson had moved to Byers. So Mom was going to Byers to have the baby. So she went in labor out on the homestead, and they started out to get to Byers to get to Grandma's place to have the baby. Well, the baby started coming, so we stopped at people, I don't know how far the house was from the homestead, but it was the Mozzie family, Agnes and Ralph Mozzie's place. So her grandma was in hard labor, so we stopped there. And Agnes was the same age as my mother, of course, never had delivered a baby. Anyway, my cousin, Harry Coons, was there. So my dad says, Harry, you get on the horse and go get the doctor, because Helen's ready to have the baby. So Harry gets on the horse and rides off through a cornfield. Well, a corn stalk came loose and hit him on the leg. He thought a rattlesnake had bitten him. So he turns around, comes back to the house, said he'd been bitten by a rattlesnake. Well, come to find out, it wasn't a rattlesnake bite. So then they sent him off again to get the doctor. Well, in the meantime, I was born, and Agnes delivered me. And she, of course, didn't know squat. And she wrapped me up, and she went out and told Daddy and Ralph that I was a boy. Said, you've got a boy. So, of course, they both started drinking their home brew, I suppose, or whatever. Anyway, they were celebrating. Dave had a boy. And finally, Harry got back with the doctor. And the doctor examined me and said, no, it was a girl. So ever since then, I can remember Ralph doing it to Agnes. He'd say, come on, Ag, come in the bedroom. I'll show you what a boy looks like. That's the story of when I was born. When Mom and Dad decided to get married, Daddy was in the Army in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas during World War I. And so Grandma took Mom down there. She went with her. I don't remember how they went. Do you suppose they went on a train?
I suppose they probably went on vacation.
And anyway, they got married down there. And then I think Mom stayed there, but it was the 3rd of December in 1918, wasn't it, when they got married?
4th of December.
Was it the 4th?
4th of December.
And I don't know if Mom stayed there or she came back home. I don't remember. But another story was that the Army was looking for Grandpa because they thought he was a draft dodger. And when they found him, he was already in the Army in Fort Leavenworth. And he drove a truck. And he always said that he carried dead bodies out to the cemetery because there was such a flu epidemic that so many people died. And that's what was his job, was to load that truck full of bodies and take it out someplace. So.
He said one time his assistant driver was a black man, and said they stopped one time and here stopped very short, and then they opened the back door and here all these bodies were standing up. This poor black man took off, never saw him again. I don't know. But of course, we have the story of how Mary got married.
Oh well. Well, yes. Of course, Andy and I were so much in love, you know.
And she was all of 17, you know.
Yeah, I was 17, and Andy gave me the engagement ring at the end of May. And boy, nothing to do, you know. We were just so much in love, and I was not pregnant. And so on a Saturday, I guess it was Friday afternoon, Andy borrowed his mother's car, and the only way he could borrow it was if his brother Robert would go along with him for some reason. So anyway, we drove to Castle Rock and got the license, because then it wouldn't be in the Denver Post, the announcement. So we got the license, and then we went down. Mom and Dad had gone someplace, I don't remember. Anyway, they were gone all day, so Rosalind was there, and we walked down to the church, just Andy and Rosalind and I, and then we met Harry Mills down there, and Reverend Brown married us, And I remember Harry walked down the aisle behind us, and he was humming "Roll Out the Barrel." And anyway, we got married, and then Rosalind says, "Give me the license, and I'll hide it from Mom." And so she took the license, and we were living. I went home. Andy went home. We weren't living together. We did go out dancing that night at Elitch's. Yeah.
Went to Elitch's.
Anyway, we hid the ring and the wedding ring, and Rosalind took off and went to California.
No, I was in Oregon at the time.
Oregon. She left anyway.
I left anyhow.
So Mom was going through some of
My stuff.
Yeah,
She's
of
going
course.
through my things.
yeah, your papers.
My
and here was the
papers.
marriage license.
And boy, of course you don't by telephone, you know, I got it by letter, you know. Why did I do
Well,
that?
you know what? I saw the letter laying there on the table, and I read it. The letter she was writing to you.
Okay.
And Mom hadn't said anything to me about it yet. And here she was giving Rosen hell for not telling her that I was married. And so anyway, you send the letter off, and then Andy and I were walking up 24th one day, and here come Mom and Dad down in the car, and they stopped, and Dad, come over here to the car, you know, and Andy and I. And he says, "By God, if you kids are married, you're going to have to start living together."
So then you moved upstairs.
So then they fixed up a little where we moved upstairs. They were living there down 24th. There was 2 rooms, so we moved in there. And when he told his dad, he was scared to tell his folks. And I don't know why. Don't ask me why we did this, because I don't know. But anyway, he told his dad, and his mother was crying, I guess. And the dad says, "Well, you did the same thing, didn't you?" And that was the end of that. We've lived together ever since. 68 years.
She owned the homestead before she was married.
Yeah, well,
And she was,
And this was one room.
this was,
Then they got married, they put a kitchen on. Then they had kids, we put another room on.
yeah. And one Sunday we were all gone. I don't remember how old us kids were. We came back and the whole corner of the house had been blown out with the
The lightning struck.
lightning struck it, and it's a wonder it didn't burn down. But I remember that corner of the house just being shattered, you know, in the back bedroom. So it was a good thing we weren't there, I guess.
of course, they lived on the homestead all the time, but when Mary and I were very, very little, you must have been a tiny baby, we went to Oklahoma. He thought that he'd get a job there in Oklahoma. And the only thing I remember about that was that the axle broke on the car, and it turned over, and they pulled me out the window, you know, they pulled me out by my arms out one of the side windows. But I don't know why they were doing it in Oklahoma.
Well, I remember when we went to Idaho for Edith's health. She had asthma so bad. And we loaded up and went out there. And David was a little guy,
2 years, yeah.
2 years old, and I was in the back seat. And the door flew open, and I grabbed a hold of his hand and hung on to him until Mom got the car stopped. And then one time, after Mary Helen she was a baby, and we had a Model A, and I was going down 26th, and I turned a little bit, and the car door fell open, and she fell out of the car, clear out, off the pavement into the mud. And I stopped the car and run back there, and she started crying. She was fine, and I fainted. And when I woke up, there was a truck driver that had stopped and was picking me up. Because I was so scared that she'd fallen out of the car.
Thank goodness for seat belts.
Well, yes.
You know, yeah.
She was standing up and that way, so
No, it's
that was strange too.
some
But
of the other things that we
Talk
told.
about and dandelion wine.
Oh, the dandelion wine, yes. Every spring, the dandelions would bred, and we'd have to go out and pick dandelions.
just pull the heads off.
Pull the heads of gallons of dandelion, and of course they would buy oranges. You know, I mean, you know, oranges and lemons, and I just, you know, that was the only time of the year. I think, well, at Christmas we did get an orange in our stocking, but oranges and lemon, and they'd boil these heads of these flowers, and then they'd throw them away. You know, they'd toss them, and then they'd put it in the crock, and it just seemed like the neighbors found out when it was ripe, because we'd get a lot of company there. But that was good stuff.
Oh, it was good wine.
It was, well, one time we made it. Jimmy and I made it years and years ago. We made it, and you know, that was real good stuff. That was.
Now there's so much spray on dandelions. I don't know
I
if you
wouldn't
want to make it.
try it. No, it's like a liqueur or something like that. It's kind of a sweet.
Well,
Swedish wine.
when we lived over there by Agate, after we moved away from the homestead, I remember they were making wine and they had it in the root cellar. And Dad and I suppose all the wives came out, our cousins, and I remember drinking that wine out of teacups. No such thing as a paper cup. And we were all, Dud and you and I, we were, all tanked out there by the root cellar on this wine. But it was
And
delicious.
I had to go. We had to go get some cattle or something like that, and Dad got off, opened a gate, and sat in an ant pile or something like that. It was very funny, very funny. But no,
How come the adults didn't find? I don't remember catching hell for it.
no, I don't know.
I don't know. Probably they were drinking the beer, I suppose, or the whiskey. Oh yeah, and Daddy had a still in the loft of the barn over there by Agate, and we were not allowed to go up there.
No.
But they'd go to town, and then we'd sneak up there and look, see what was happening. You know, here they were making whiskey up there.
And the people would come from Denver.
Yeah.
They'd come out at like midnight, and here Mom would go out and kill chickens, and she'd fry chickens
In the middle of the night.
middle of the night, 1 o'clock in the morning. And I remember Ralph Mossy and Tim, about 2 or 3 of them, and they, somebody was saying, "Oh, you're eating too much." Well, you just count my bones, and I'll have another piece, or something like that. It was so funny. Another thing we do in the fall, we'll pick up choke cherries. Remember, we make a little picnic or something like that, and then we go pick choke cherries, and they make the jelly. That was our jelly. You know? So it was.
And when we had a picnic, we all had to sit on the ground. There was no such thing as folding chairs.
And you know
But
what?
whoever had a baby, they would take a chair and hold it on the outside of the car, and then that mother could sit with the baby and nurse the baby.
Oh yeah.
Aunt Maud, I don't know why I say Aunt Maud was involved in that. But there was no folding chairs.
And you know, our sandwiches was she'd take bologna, grind it up, and something
Eggs.
very good.
Eggs.
Egg, I don't know what it
still
was.
make that.
That was very good. Then of course the time that David was born, when David was born,
I didn't even know Mom was pregnant when I was 13.
and we had just moved, and and then the next morning we told the bus driver that we had a brother, and he said, Helen had a boy. Helen. But I didn't. But you knew she was going to have one. But we were supposed to go. They were supposed to go all the way to Byers, where Grandma and Grandpa lived. But I guess it was too close, and had to stop in Deer Trail.
At Aunt Maud's house.
With Aunt Maud's.
That's where he was born.
We had to do that. Well, but that was a close call there, I guess.
She had to keep the bed bugs off of the baby. Aunt Maud's gone, so we don't
Talk about the bed bugs.
We had a lot of bed bugs in her beds.
That is just about it.
And of course, those days they were supposed to stay in bed 2 weeks or something like that after a baby.
Oh yeah.
And keep their navel covered.
Oh yeah, you had to wrap your
Band.
stomach up and everything.
I know Dave had a herniated navel or something. I mean, it was out and something like that. They went back to the doctor. Supposed to go back to the doctor. They took him back to the doctor. I don't know, a couple of weeks later. The doctor wanted $2, and Dad said, "I'm not going to give him $2." He wouldn't pay him. He didn't do anything but just look at him. He wouldn't pay him.
Maybe he thought it was the doctor's fault that he was sticking out.
Yeah.
But he didn't have $2.
I know, probably didn't have $2. No, it's very. At times you wonder.
I don't have one of those.
And you know, we used to, in the summer, we'd have us kids that get sick, vomiting and everything. And Mom always called it summer complaint.
Summer complaint.
And you know darn well, it was that water we were drinking out of that pond. because that's the only water we ever had. And then we had a bucket of water in the kitchen and a ladle. Sometimes, and we all drank out of the same ladle. You know, so if one of us we'd all be sick.
I remember you used to get very sick.
I vomited and everything.
This is how they brought the water from the lake. See, Mom, she's standing on that. It's a sled, and that's a barrel. And they're bringing water down to the house. That's Dad. They're bringing the water down.
Well, until it got the bugs in, you know, probably sitting around, but actually it was, I imagine it was quite good.
And I guess you took
up
pictures of
upper lake
these, huh?
there.
This is the house. This is the horse barn. Then look at different, and there's the house, and this is the cow barn.
Where's the cow?
Here's the cow barn. This is a different direction than this. This is taken from one direction, then you go over here, and this was taken the other. And this is Mom's school room,
Yeah,
schoolhouse. She went to school in there.
Yeah, that was over on Grandma and Grandpa's homestead. Yeah.
So
And
this
I
was
think that building is still
this is our
there.
home. Look at that little house. You can see an outhouse out there. You have to get tight.
And you know, us girls all slept in the same bed. We all slept, two of us at the top and two of us at the bottom.
Yeah. It was so,
But you know, you think what the kids have today, and you know, we'd get maybe a doll at Christmas time, and that's about it.
maybe a pair of socks or something like that.
Yeah, and maybe an orange and some nuts and some candy.
Yeah, we had a stocking with an orange and
But we made up our own games. You know, we made bud pies and laid them out in the sun to dry, and then we'd stack them up. They'd be cookies, and we played hide and seek at night. We played
Annie over.
and kick the can, and we made our own fun. I mean, we played every night outside.
We didn't need
outside
it.
doing something.
Yeah.
I don't even remember having balls to throw around, did we?
I don't remember them.
I remember having.
What we throw over?
Well, we had to have something to throw.
balls to throw over.
We had
We must
something.
have had a ball to throw over the house.
Yeah.
And then whoever'd catch it would come around
And try to
and try to get us some way. I don't remember just how the game went.
To tag the person, I guess they run around.
Yeah, I suppose.
Well, beckon, you know, you'd hide and then the one that comes out, you beckon them, you know, I don't know how it worked. But this was at the schoolhouse, you know, down at the schoolhouse. We had did they talk anything about the one-room schoolhouse that we had? We had.
Yeah, I did. And had her take the picture.
Yeah.
Of the
They were basically, well, we had
6 people.
Jim, we're having
Our haircuts. Of course, Daddy would cut our hair, and it was just bangs and straight around. And sometimes I hated those haircuts. Oh God, I hated them. And
well, your hair was
You
a
got
bit
so you-
curly.
yeah, I had a little bit.
See, here's a picture of us.
Yeah.
That's the haircuts we used to get,
Yeah.
see?
Just straight around.
But Mary got, so she knew how to do hers because she had wavy hair.
I had a little bit of curl in my hair, but that was. And then spring come, and we'd start going barefooted.
yes.
You know, you'd take your shoes off, and you were waiting. You wanted to get barefooted. You know, that was a big thing.
The whole summer long with their feet.
And then in the fall, we'd all get a new pair of shoes. And
Mom would get for the schoolhouse. She would get so much money for cleaning our schoolhouse just before we went to school.
Yeah.
I think she got $5, something like a big deal, you know.
you know, in a couple of years there, the teacher lived with us. You know.
Yes, she would live with us for several months, and then she'd go to Middlemass's, and she'd live there.
And she'd just hang a curtain between her bed and our bed. You know. And that would be her room. I don't remember what the teacher, I think Schultz.
Miss Schultz.
She lived with us a little bit.
I said, this Miss Schultz. This Santiago Rendon, remember him?
Yeah.
Remember Santiago Rendon? He had heard they were having a new young teacher, and so he came up, and he came to the door, and he said to her, which was the way to Lyman. So she told him, you know, that night I went to Dad, told Dad that, and he laughed and laughed. Santiago was going to come up and ask her for a date, and she really wasn't very good looking. So
He asked the directions to Lyman instead.
yeah, directed him to Lyman.
He was a good-looking Mexican.
He
really was a good-looking guy.
There's a picture of the
Yeah.
school,
Yeah.
the people in the school.
Yeah, I talked about that, yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah. 'Cause- So, oh, this has been fun. Hasn't this been fun?
Yeah. We had the Japanese, we had a Japanese,
Oh, yeah, talk about that.
a family lived up the, maybe 4 or 5 miles from it, something up the creek that always set up
And
the
you got a
creek.
picture of them.
And they would have a child, and they sent him back to Japan to be educated. So they had several. And but at one time, I guess they brought them all back. And there was Luke, it was a girl, I don't know the name, Lily, Michi, and Yuki were the girls, and John. And they had Luke, John, Paul, Peter, and James.
Can you-
all the
can you get
apostles,
that?
But
Yes, she's talking about that.
Paul and James and John went to school with. We came to the small school, and when they first came, I don't think this was Mrs. Schultz or some of them would talk to John about life over in Japan, which is very interesting. I mean, he would tell us some of the beliefs and everything. That was very, very interesting.
Well, and Daddy, of course, he was a racist. He said if another war broke out, why, he'd just go up the creek and
get a couple of chaps.
get him a couple of chaps.
No, that's right.
But their last name was
Koshi. Koshi, yeah. But they would leave early in the spring because they had to go up and work in the sugar beets. James and they would all go up and
around Longmont, I suppose, or something.
to come over. It of course cost a lot of money, so they had a Japanese in Denver sponsor them, pay for their way to come over, but to promise to marry one of the girls. He was supposed to get one of the girls, marry him.
Oh,
And not one of the one I didn't know her,
Yeah.
but she came over there. She didn't want to marry him, but I guess she eventually did, But because he paid their way, so she had to do it, Yeah, okay. But,
Realized that you was commander.
What do you got to say, Bill?
Oh, they didn't know? Yeah.
Nothing.
I've
I
been
don't
in
know
the
nothing.
Legion now for 50 years. And I've been in the auxiliary.
Red light's on.
Yeah, I joined.
That means you're talking. It's your
When
turn.
the red light's on, the auctioneer says you're paying too much.
And then I.
You're paying too
I joined
much.
a
Yeah.
woman's
When the red light comes on,
post back
you're
there.
paying too much.
333 is just women.
Auxiliary right now. Carol is. She's an auxiliary.
See, they have the Legion here in Grand Junction. They have their meetings on last Thursday of the month at lunchtime. And I haven't been able to get down to them.
I don't think you're missing too much. I don't think you could go
Well,
to VFW.
they're active. I see the ladies.
Yeah.
Oh, she's working
VFW
just
down
3 or
there
4 days a
downtown.
week at the church.
They got a lot of meals down there. You ought to check in on that.
Yeah.
VFW. You can't join, but they'll let you go in.
I could join the auxiliary, but I don't want to buy it.
Going to college.